Welcome to the Nashe Hour with Miss D. Dive into uplifting and transformative topics. Subscribe now and join our community. Join us on the Nashe Hour for more.
Today we are continuing with a very controversial topic. Why does God allow suffering? And we are diving deeper into a critical analysis of this topic. Is suffering a divine tool for teaching obedience? Or is there a deeper meaning behind it? Let's explore this critical topic together. Some believe that suffering is God's way of teaching obedience, citing Hebrews 5 verse 8, where Jesus learned obedience through suffering. But does this apply to all believers? And what do other scriptures say about why God allows suffering? The passage presents a theological argument that suffering is a divine tool for teaching obedience. It cites Hebrews 5 verse 8, which refers to Jesus learning obedience through suffering to support this claim. This assertion raises several theological, philosophical, and ethical concerns. From a theological perspective, the passage assumes that suffering is a direct and intentional method used by God to teach obedience. While Hebrews 5 verse 8 says, although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. The broader context of this verse emphasizes Jesus' role as the high priest who fully understood human suffering, which is Hebrews 4 verse 15. This does not necessarily imply that suffering is the primal means by which all believers learn obedience. The scripture presents contrasting views on suffering. For example, Psalms 34 verse 19 says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. This suggests that suffering is not a permanent state of the children of God. Revelation 2:21 verse 4 reinforces this idea, stating that he will wipe away every tear from our faces, of our eyes, and death shall no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. Number 2, the suffering of Jesus was unique in that it fulfilled God's redemptive plan. Isaiah 53 verse 5 prophesies, but he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement of our peace was upon him, by his stripes we are healed. Unlike human suffering, which can have various causes, Christ's suffering was a deliberate act of atonement for human sins. From a philosophical and the ethical considerations, the idea that suffering is necessary for obedience raises moral questions or concerns. If God, who is loving and merciful, 1 John 4 verse 8, intentionally allows suffering to teach lessons, this could conflict with the concept of divine benevolence. Further, Proverbs 22 verse 8 states, whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. This suggests that suffering often results from human actions rather than divine will. Philosophically, the problem of evil arises. If God is all powerful and all good, why would he use suffering as a means of instruction rather than a more compassionate approach? This question challenges the notion that suffering is always divinely orchestrated. From a human experience and free will, the passage does not acknowledge the role of human free will and the natural consequences of human actions. Many forms of suffering, such as war, disease, or injustice, are often the result of human decisions rather than direct intervention. Galatians 6 verse 7 states, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that will he also reap." This verse highlights the principle of cause and effect, suggesting that suffering often stems from human actions rather than God's deliberate testing. From alternative biblical perspectives, other parts of the Bible present suffering in different lights. James 1 verse 2 to 4 says that trials develop perseverance and maturity. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Romans 8 verse 28 emphasizes that God can bring good out of suffering rather than necessarily causing it. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. The book of Job challenges the simplistic idea that suffering is always for instruction. Job's suffering was not due to disobedience, but rather served a greater mysterious purpose beyond human understanding. The passage presents a perspective that aligns with certain theological traditions but lacks a broader engagement with the alternative interpretations of suffering. While suffering can lead to spiritual growth, framing it primarily as a lesson in obedience oversimplifies a deeply complex issue. A more nuanced view would consider the multiple causes of suffering, the nature of divine love, and the diverse ways individuals experience and interpret their struggles. The Bible presents a spectrum of perspectives on suffering, and the holistic understanding must incorporate divine justice, human free will, and God's ultimate promise of redemption and restoration. If this message blessed you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or leave a comment in the comment section. We want to hear your thoughts. Let's encourage each other and grow in faith together. See you in the next video. Thank you and God bless.